for instance, with what I mentioned before, that's very much a case of having integrity in engineering. So that's a value I'd say is really important to doing good. That also extends to making sure that like your clients know the limitations and the abilities of what you're selling, of course. So I think integrity is a very important point.
What's up, my Pample? This is Mike Check Mike.
This is Eugene.
This is Jonathan.
And today is January 6th, Monday. So as we jump into our first segment, the big question, where we discuss challenging and conceptual questions, our question for today for this beautiful team right here is going to be, what does doing good mean to you? So let's start off with that, and either of you feel free to jump in, or maybe I'll pick on someone otherwise if not. But let's start off with really a question of when we look at what doing good means. I'd like to ask, what feels meaningful to y'all?
I guess I'll start first. So at least to me, I don't want to be an engineer that designs one small component in a larger subsystem that does something for some XYZ company. I mean, I'm sure many people would be fine with doing that. Pays well, you're still doing engineering, and if for some people that's totally fine. But at least to me, I've always felt like I wanted to do something that directly impacts people. For a while in high school, I always had the idea of being able to use engineering to be able to help like third world countries, maybe places in Africa or the Middle East, villages that really do need technology for like their children, fresh water, clean energy. So for a long time, I've always kind of had this passion in me that if I wanted to create things, I wanted to create things that directly impact people. Like that, those exact words were in my head since high school. Like be able to directly help people, not just be some kind of cog in a bigger, in this bigger company like prime contractors like Boeing or Northrop. Like sure, they create technology that helps people, but the contribution that I feel like I give there doesn't feel like meaningful in a way. So at least so at least to me, I know you were asking what does it mean to do good, and for me, what does it mean to feel like do something meaningful? For me, like definitely those two kind of questions are tied together for me personally, where it's like I want to feel like whatever I'm spending my time into, whatever I divert my time into, whatever I'm doing, it's gotta feel like it'll pay off at the end. Not just for me, but for whoever I'm doing this for. And whoever I'm doing it for, I want it to be like someone that really needs the solution, not some person up higher in rank. I don't want to just do it just because I want a promotion or just get paid or something. Because something I feel like I discovered in myself is like, I don't want to just do things purely for money.
That makes sense. Good sense of morality. How about you, Jonathan?
Well, I think Eugene touched on a very good point, talking about creating a product that fundamentally does good. Its intended purpose is not just to solve a problem, because that's sort of the essence of engineering, but some problems are more pressing or urgent than others. So for instance, engineering water filtration for like a third world community is a more pressing problem that's being solved. So I agree that when it comes to the types of problems that are being solved, some feel more fulfilling to solve because they're more urgent. They more directly impact people's well-being and livelihood. I also think part of doing good as a team of engineers comes down to also the approach we take for our products. It means not just creating products that do good, but also creating good, high-quality engineering products. That means a few things to me, specifically coming up with things that are reliable and well-tested, that are trustworthy, that people can depend upon when it really counts. I think that's an ethical obligation of engineers, just as much as it is that the product should be, when it's functioning correctly, helping people, it should also be functioning correctly, reliably, and consistently, and be well tested and thought out. There have been certainly some disasters in the past that have come from cutting corners or taking shortcuts or pushing things out the door before they're ready. So I think as a team of engineers, or any engineer should have a obligation to make sure that they're applying their craft in an ethical way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense too. You do have some realities to balance, right? With sometimes you might feel financial pressure to do something like that kind of goes back to the cutting corners, or sometimes, it's very tempting to take that easier route because, you're trying to maybe get a win after you're testing. It's not quite working, but it's almost there yet. And, I like we were both saying about sort of the morality of it too. And one thing that was interesting, you were mentioning, air filtration or water. I think to me, that's something that's important is, I guess, what I would call collective wins, because there's kind of that notion when you talk about doing good of, well, who are you doing good for, right? And I think you kind of talked about that a little bit, Eugene, saying, is it doing good for ourselves, doing good for the company, or doing good for a village somewhere? It's like, fundamentally, what does that really mean? And the thing is, like, kind of like with that pressure of cutting corners, sometimes you'll have that push and pull of like different, maybe two villages want different things, or their ideal outcome is different, or but there are certain things I think that we can all rally it behind, right? Like cleaner water, cleaner air, more sustainable agriculture, mental health. I think it'd be rare, maybe not impossible, but rare that someone's like, no, I don't want these things, right? It comes down when there are issues. It's more so an issue of, hey, if we're cleaning water for this one village, it maybe is taking up some resources from another place, and that's more of an issue maybe of resource management, or doing something that is good for one at the expense of another. And so that kind of brings up an interesting question of values, and maybe that's where we can segue next. Is I'm curious about what values do you put behind that notion of doing good?
When you say values, like, are there any like, are you talking about like, I guess I'm struggling to come up with like what words
I would
should come
say,
to mind when you say
for
values.
instance, with what I mentioned before, that's very much a case of having integrity
Mm-hmm.
in engineering. So that's a value I'd say is really important to doing good. That also extends to making sure that like your clients know the limitations and the abilities of what you're selling, of
Mm-hmm.
course. So I think integrity is a very important point.
No, that's a good one. And definitely, to your point, we've seen some tragic examples where that goes out the window. I can jump in on that one too. Like for me, and maybe it's kind of a parallel to what you're just saying. I would put listening and innovation as sort of the two values that I put there. Listening, because it kind of comes back to the idea that doing good is kind of relative, and it could be at the expense of someone else. So listening comes in the form of you're going to have different stakeholders for whatever that situation is, and making sure that if you're doing good by an individual, it's not putting agriculture business out of business, for example, or putting some strain on their resources. You kind of have to evaluate a little bit of everything. And I think one of the reasons why, especially when it comes to maybe environmental questions today, we're not successful necessarily in having a solution, where we're still kind of all figuring it out. That's where the innovation comes in. I'm not quite sure that the solution today, nicely prepackaged out of the box, already exists. So I think that's going to be key to not only be able to listen to people, but if that solution doesn't exist yet, then it's kind of on to us and others to answer that hard question and go innovate, go build things with that integrity in order to be able to solve those problems, right? Like whether that takes the form of different forms of sustainable energy, or different filtration systems. It might just be something that we need to go out and invent and really kind of consider. So.
For me, I think one of those values for me would definitely be designing whatever we are creating for the client. I think to what you were saying just earlier, Michael, we've been doing a little bit of research on like what design thinking is, and trying to create like a human-centric design.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to kind of just want to create something that just reflects my own personal tastes. And we were just talking about before with one product that we have in mind where I have my own personal biases. I want it to look a certain way, but then you kind of have to stop yourself and ask, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for them? And for them, I mean the customers, whoever would
Mm-hmm.
use this product. And that simple question really does help kind of filter whatever bias or personal taste that I'm trying to inject into this product that may only work for me, but not for the vast majority of other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I like where your thought process was going there too, and it kind of leads me to the next question, and maybe following on what you said, I'll just kind of jump in myself too to set the scene here. And it goes on, what are the responsibilities that come along with doing good? And I think one of the things you mentioned that kind of made me think about that is that notion of honesty with oneself. Like you were saying, am I doing this, for myself, or am I really doing it for the other? Kind of separating the two, because to some extent, it also goes back to the other point you were mentioning of, you bring up a topic that's important to you. It might be climate change if you're in an area that's affected by that, but then others, decision makers, or just even other people might face different kinds of problems. And to them, the priority, that sense of priority, is going to be different. And if you're resource constrained, it's going to bring up a notion, or at least a question of, well, who do you service first? What do you tackle first, right? And it's not necessarily that one is more important than the other, but there's kind of these questions of, well, what's for the greater good? Do I tackle the thing that helps 80% of people, and then the more niche things we keep to later? Or for one reason or another, you need to start with something else, because then that effect will tend to propagate and have some benefits to other solutions, right? So there's kind of some interesting notions there to play with. And I think to really be able to tackle those, that honesty with oneself, not only the, am I doing this for myself versus someone else, but also kind of going back to that integrity, perhaps. You could be doing good, and it's like those sci-fi movies where the evil person is convinced they were doing good, and they probably genuinely were when they started, but then it kind of drifted somewhere along the line. Mm-hmm. And if you don't pause to close that feedback loop and say, hey, am I really still doing good, or did what we start actually tend to shift because, I don't know, the geopolitical landscape shifted, or the science evolved throughout that process? If you don't have that feedback, I feel like it's very easy to drift into
I think it ties back to what you mentioned earlier about listening to the people that are your clients, but also the people who you're affecting through your work. Mm-hmm. I think closing that feedback loop, as you say, understanding how people feel about what you're doing and how it's changing outcomes for them is really important to figuring out, are you doing good? How can you do more good? And when you should pivot your approach or your product to accomplish greater good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no. So I like what you said. And, given the time we have for this segment, at least, I think I'd like to close it out with asking, like, if you had to really distill kind of everything we were talking about, or if you feel like something was left unsaid, if you had to distill into a simple principle, what might that look like?
That's a very good question to come away with something succinct. I think the 3 values that we touched on earlier are really key to this conversation, or at least our understanding of how to do good as a team of engineers, or even as a person in a wider context. Mm-hmm. Is operating with integrity, listening to how people feel about what you're doing, and looking analytically at the outcomes that you're creating, mm-hmm. on whether the actions you're taking are causing there directly to be a positive impact, and also looking for new solutions beyond what's happening already, and that's innovation. So I think those 3 principles are a really good starting point for kind of centering how we should do good as a team.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree there. To that, I think I'd add try and be succinct as well. I think those solutions should elevate both people and the world meaning environment, but also people from a sense of fulfillment, self-actualization. If we go to Maslow's pyramid of needs, that ability to live to your full potential. But I do think, and that ties back to what you're saying, to be able to do that, you do need that process that's being created, or those solutions to be rooted in honesty and innovation as well. Honesty with everyone in general, but also oneself, and certainly innovation, because I just don't know that the perfect solution exists today. And so that's kind of what we're here for, in a way, right?
I think for me, I would think these may not be like very succinct values, but I would definitely think, like, number 1, you would want to sit down and empathize with whoever you're trying to, with whoever's problems you want to solve. You want to have that compassion and empathy to want to do something about whatever said person or group is what they're being afflicted with. And you really want to understand the problem, be in their shoes. You need to have that context personally, something that gives you personal investment in. So then we can develop technology, respect each other in the team, have good work culture, to then create a system that can improve the quality of life of whatever collective. And I'm trying to say like that because instead of just saying doing good for people, because people say do good, like, what does it mean to do good? And I would say, at least for me, right now, it would have something to do with improving the quality of life with a collective, whether that collective is in a hurricane struck area, or a third world country, or world that's an area that's being hit by war, or just in our community, even just a group of people, or it could even just be, well, maybe just a single person, but that's not very lucrative. But hopefully you solve a problem that does afflict many people. So that's where I'm going with.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Well, thanks for that first segment. And with that, we can jump straight into our second segment,
Exactly.
Thanks Mom, where we use ChatGPT to give us 2 words that we're going to ideate around. So with that, Eugene will dramatically get our 2 words of the day. Thanks for the sound effects there.
Alrighty, here we go.
Let's see what we have.
Oh gosh. Pixel hammock.
Pixel hammock.
Pixel hammock.
Pixel hammock.
When your pixels need a rest. Just,
Okay.
Man, that's going to be a fun one to.
Well, there's certainly food for thought here.
I mean,
Yeah.
so what I'm thinking right now, what came in my head is like, you know how if you go to Best Buy, this is kind of a I'm trying to take us to a different product right now. But there's if you go to Best Buy and you want to decorate your home, like your room, like especially if you're like one of those streaming types, do you have like those grid lights? If you see like those triangle lighting panels, I don't know if you've ever seen them, but like on Best Buy, they would have those, and you can use it just to decorate your walls. You could buy multiple panels, and you could put them they can all share the same side to make it. You could create some sort of cool geometric design. And the reason why I bring that up is that maybe for these pixel hammocks, you could sell individual modular pixels. Well, when I say pixels, it could just be like maybe hexagon, sturdy shapes. Maybe that you sell them in different colors. Maybe they provide haptic feedback, so they provide some sort of, I don't know. Maybe they vibrate if you sit on them, so that if you have multiple of them together, like maybe with these hexagon modular panels, maybe they're foam or something. I don't know, but something that's comfortable for a person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you attach them, but maybe you use like clips or maybe magnets or I don't know, something. But something that would connect multiple hexagons together, and then you could just create like some sort of hammock, with that, and then maybe have some strings at the end. So I'm just thinking just like multiple of these modular tiles that could be decorated, but then maybe I'm saying like with haptic feedback, if they detect some amount of weight on them, and maybe you could code or like automate some sort of behavior for each tile, depending on on an app or something. You could have each of these tiles maybe heat up, especially if you're trying to use the hammock on a cold day.
Yeah.
Or maybe have some sort of cooling feature, or just vibrate like a massage hammock kind of thing.
That's where my mind was going when you said that. I was kind of thinking like the massage chair when you mentioned haptic feedback.
Yeah.
That could be kind of cool. Like, but I do like where your brain is going of like customizing as the sleepers experience. Like maybe you can capture some jostling and tossling or something. And for when you mentioned the pixel part, I was thinking of light therapy. You know how you like have those alarm clocks, they'll have a nice progressive increase of light to wake you up slowly and stuff. I wonder if you could kind of combine like the, hot or cold or like massage function, or maybe even some kind of like light therapy over there as well. It's like a bedding maybe that you put, maybe less of a hammock unless you want to sleep in a hammock. That's totally fine.
I'm gonna add on to your point. So like maybe you can sell these, even though it says hammock, but you can sell these tiles so that you can just put them on a bed, like a mattress kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can imagine like we as a company that would sell pixel hammock, in theory, we're an XYZ company. We could pre-program some sort of routines that if you have a bunch of these tiles together, maybe you have a wake up routine that you can just run on your phone at like 7 a.m. So what would happen is that going to the light therapy, you have like these pixels, they all kind of light up in a nice soothing pattern, and then maybe they have speakers and they can play like some sort of song, and then you have like, going back to the whole haptic feedback idea, you have the some of the tiles kind of like pulsating, vibrating, like kind of thing. And since you're laying on it, you can probably feel that. Like for me, I tend to wake up not by sound, but like my Apple Watch is vibrating, so I wake up to that. So like if you have your whole bed kind of just shaking you up gently.
Yeah, that's a
maybe whole tectonic plate slipping.
Maybe that's something you could toggle.
Small earthquake.
That'd be cool. But like,
what level of wake up do you want?
Jostling earthquake.
Major seismic event.
That certainly would prevent people from lying in bed too long.
Yeah,
it would become uncomfy very quickly if it were.
So, hey, you have a pixel hammock. I know for a fact you didn't oversleep.
Yeah, but I like that interpretation of pixel hammock. It's a very literal one, and I think it works. It's an interesting idea to think about. I think having the idea of having it be a mattress topper, where these pixels form a continuous sheet that you can lay on top of the bed that you already have, is probably the most practical approach to bringing this sort of thing to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting Internet of Things project to do. And
yeah, the name is growing on me as a company. Like, I really hope someone picks that up. Yeah. But like you do. I mean, there is a market for yeah, I guess like sheets or covers, whichever they might be called, when it's like you have maybe one partner that runs hot, another that runs cold, and there is a market for either cooling systems or heating systems. But those are usually uniformly distributed across, where one person would sleep and then the other side. I don't know that there is one that offers a gradient where it's like, hey, I want my feet to be hot, but like my back to be cold, or, and then you can kind of customize that, or like, yeah, maybe the haptic feedback you want in an area or another, if you want, or, that notion of like customizability as a gradient of your person, right? And then your partner, if it's like a twin or queen or king setup, like can have, their own settings and stuff like that. Might be a bit trickier with the light settings and just isolate that experience. But yeah, maybe the haptic could be isolated, I guess, if you get some good dampening, or maybe like the, whatever you use as a material in between the two.
So supposed to accomplish both the heating and cooling. The heating's quite simple. You can just have resistive heaters.
Yeah, just the hell of it.
Depends how much power you're willing to let this blanket draw, though.
Yeah, hey,
for the cooling, there are piezoelectric coolers, but they're kind of bad from what I understand. It depends. You could also just have fans built into each tile that kind of blow cool air from the outside into like underneath the cover.
Yeah, could have be a bit bulkier, like a water pump system. I'm pretty sure there's a brand that does that already too.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a weighted blanket too.
Yeah, hopefully you don't get a leak. That might be a bit,
you need to make either if it's a mattress or a blanket, you need to make it comfy. So whatever electronics you have in there, microcontrollers, fans, lights, you just need to make them very so you can't feel them when you're lying on top of it. So it doesn't feel like you're lying on top of a bunch of like metallic lumps.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, still has to be a
there are some technical challenges to overcome for this sort of project.
Yeah, and some, at least on the heating element, it might be a little easier. I wonder if the for the air, it might be easier to route. Maybe you have a way to do some smart routing or something like that too, or across other tiles, or just as an average, it hits a certain temperature. But yeah, I think I like that direction too. Initially, when you mentioned Pixel Hammock, I was thinking advertising for some reason, but I'm trying to think of what would be a direction that's not just a billboard that has hammocks or clusters of pixels. But yeah,
I have another idea, but I wasn't sure if you guys wanted to share something.
No, go for it. Yeah.
Did you have anything, Jonathan?
You can go ahead.
So I was scrolling through YouTube yesterday, and there's this really cool video that I have saved to watch later, but it's about volumetric displays. And so in case anyone who's listening isn't familiar with what volumetric displays are, it's the idea where you can have like I think LED strip, and it's like pulsing light, but you spin that strip, so then you end up creating like this 3D holographic image, so to speak. I'm probably butchering like the definition, but if you just type up volumetric displays on YouTube, you'll see some pretty good examples.
Yeah,
I saw like a previous video where someone was able to like run like Doom, like the original game, but like since how Doom is normally just a 2D game, they were able to create that and extrapolate that into like a 3D kind of version of the game using a volumetric display.
That's cool.
And so that's like a different video. But the one I was just seeing yesterday, they were using like a Raspberry Pi 4 with some other electronics. So it's like it was a complete home DIY kind of project. But where I'm going with this is that with volumetric displays, you can show like a 3D grid, so to speak. Your X, Y, and Z, and then you can create like pixels, so to speak, like dots in the air. So your LEDs are spinning at a certain rate so that the LEDs kind of stay fixed there. So the reason why I'm going with this is that could be like the pixel part. Hammock, I'm trying to take a bit more of a symbolic kind of meaning. So hammock, you go on a hammock to relax. So I really like that Michael, you brought up the whole light therapy thing. So maybe for this could be I'm thinking of a product that could be used in like an office place, or just this is more of a novel, trivial kind of desk decoration. But you have like these volumetric displays, which again is it's like a technology I don't think a lot of people are really looking into yet, especially on like a professional and like an industry level. Just it's more like a personal, like silly project that amateurs do. But maybe you can do something with light therapy, and then you could create like these holographic images, or something that where you have that running in the background, just so maybe your office isn't so like stale and like stagnant. You have something cute going off in the corner of your office.
Like a customized decorative experience, but like it reacts to
the same idea of why people would put like a plant in their office. Better work culture, better mental health and stuff like that. So maybe with something like that, a little cute volumetric display with like light therapy, or something you can do with pixels. Maybe have like words of affirmation, anything on that could help people in the office setting, especially in like a cubicle.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. That might help.
Yeah, very either poorly lit or with those very bright white halogen lights. You're not really getting necessarily a pleasant experience. Having something that kind of helps with morale or just happiness or that sense of relaxation. If we take the hammock more metaphorically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because absolutely. I mean, there's a ton of effort that's being placed into sort of workspace arrangements and optimizing productivity and just helping people look at startups too. I mean, they're trying to change that a little bit with having, it's a completely different take than your typical cubicle approach that you're mentioning, right? Just because also a lot of it is backed by trying to create a positive environment to have people want to stay and be a part of, as opposed to just wanting to be in and out because it's depressing, right? And so especially, I mean, we're lucky here because we're in a sunny place, but I mean, if you're, I don't know, in
Seattle
or I don't know, Norway in the winter and you already don't get much sunlight, if on top of that you got a cubicle, I mean, it's probably going to walk out of that one depressed for anyone who's 50 degrees and above.
Definitely.
But displays that maybe are modular, you can reshape if it's like piecewise tiles. So then you can have kind of maybe non-conventional, not necessarily just like a square billboard, but maybe curved surfaces or stuff you can kind of play with. I wonder if that would expand sort of options there. Maybe something modular. It's a little more dynamic as well. Not necessarily self-rearranging or that, but I wonder if that could be like for some reason, I'm thinking pixel hammock, and I'm thinking more like of a knapsack or like a little cluster of pixels that got like put in a bag somewhere. Like, all right, we're taking you now, right? And so I'm gonna put you on a tile.
So the first thing that comes to my mind when I first heard of pixel hammock was more so like the metaphorical meaning of hammock, being that it's supposed to be relaxing, it's supposed to be a place that you can rest. So the first thing that kind of jumped into my mind was some sort of like relaxation meditation pod. So I don't know if this would be claustrophobic, but you like climb into the pod and it like lowers down, almost sort of like a cryo chamber from like sci-fi.
Yeah, it's like how you have those oxygen chambers, for example, or the cryo ones. Yeah, have one that like uses those pixel hammocks
something of that sort. But maybe on the inside, there's like a display that either like shows you something relaxing or like has like very therapeutic lights, and there's like a wide like glass pane.
Yeah, there was a expo like years ago too, and I forget the artist's name, where they had something similar, like a chamber you would slide in, and you had essentially a light experience that went along with some music. And like I do have to say, it was pretty relaxing too. At the time too, it was like pretty stressful. I walked in, and I was like, okay, like this is kind of cool. But it was this huge machine, right? Like you couldn't do it at an individual level. And so maybe to make that on a smaller scale, like more individual size pods and stuff like that.
It would still be though tricky to pull off because just the size of what you need to create, especially for a product that's supposed to be like a relaxation space.
Yeah.
It would be like a piece of furniture comparable to your couch in size. So it would be very difficult to store and to move around. And
absolutely. No, it definitely have to be
practical.
Yeah, some facility you go to more so than one at home too, because the scalability otherwise might be a bit tough. It's like, I don't know that it would sell like Peloton, one in every house. So that might be a bit of an issue there logistically. And
I was going to add on to what you were suggesting with the little pod that people sleep in, because I think like Google has something like a sleep pod, right?
Oh, I've heard of nap pods before.
I think so, yeah. So I wonder if you could like take that idea that they've already been using for a while now and kind of take it to the next level where, maybe a prototype could be you somehow buy a sleep pod from Google, strip it down, and just apply some like electronic stuff in there. I don't know if they have electronics in there. It's supposed to be a sleep pod, so I guess it should be a bit like just
they let you TikTok doom scroll while you're lying there for your nap.
Maybe. But I think I really like the idea that you have there, Jonathan. An idea that I had earlier as well. It's like leading into the metaphor and having technology that enables relaxation. I was thinking, what if you create an app in like VR where it's like, you wear the headset, but then pixels, digital technology, pixels on a screen, VR. Maybe you have some sort of app that uses like, I don't know, again, leaning to light therapy, maybe a completely different kind of therapy. You have like ambient soundscapes, pleasant landscapes, whatever relaxes the person effectively. But maybe you have something like that in a VR setting for pixel hammock, like hammock, again, just relaxation. Maybe you open the app and there is a hammock that you walk into in VR, and then maybe that in and of itself is an experience, because maybe a lot of people don't have a hammock, and maybe for people who have a hammock, maybe they're not in that area where they could use it easily. So if you have the VR experience of maybe you just move your controller, like your digital character, onto a hammock, maybe you can do something with that, and that would be fun.
I think it's very central to the idea of a Pitzel hammock, or just that combination of words, is that oftentimes technology causes us stress and frustration, whether that's through constant notifications or through kind of our exposure to things that are supposed to rile up our emotions online. So I think having the concept of a piece of technology or digital technology that's supposed to promote relaxation is sort of fundamental to the idea of a Pitzel hammock, whatever form it takes. And as for the VR idea you proposed, I certainly have heard of relaxing VR experiences or things that are supposed to be, for example, you go on a safari or you see just some scenery, for example, like Google Earth VR has stuff like that. I do think, though, that when it comes to the sensation of being in a hammock, it's such a tactile experience that you would lose almost everything by transferring it purely to a visual media.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm still in that initial idea of the, like, more in the physical realm of the haptic.
The first idea, yeah.
Well, because, like, to y'all's point too, like, there is a lot of daily stressors in the world, right? Whether it's technology or others and work and stuff. So I think that need for relaxation, like as a client base, right, is kind of there to stay. But then the haptic feedback thing you mentioned, and I'm still thinking of that specifically, that piecewise element, composition of like maybe something you can put down. Mm-hmm. And maybe less so on the relaxation, but one thing that comes to mind too is like you have people that are bedridden, for example, and they can't necessarily move around. And so having some kind of haptic feedback or maybe pressure, you can help people who are, just have to stay on their back, kind of alleviate some of those like sores, bed sores, essentially, things like that. So I almost wonder if you have kind of like a medical application to it where, for hospitals, for example, it's still, it could maybe be borderline still relaxation, but also kind of like medical necessity as well. And I don't know if someone's already out there doing that, but that'd be kind of an interesting, maybe an interesting thing to look into for our listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Anything else? Well, with all that, thanks for joining on this episode of the Pample Pod. Do remember to partake in comments. Let us know if you would have taken this discussion of Thanks Mom in a very different direction, or what your take on that would have been. And if you have any thoughts on what doing good means to you, we'd love to hear it in the comments. So thank you for joining.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. See you in the next one.